Hi, and welcome back. I've got something very, very exciting, or I find it exciting, to share today actually. Now, I'm just going to go out of the game here for a second. Where am I? So, bear with me a second so I work out. That'll be the easiest way to get out. Okay, so if I just close that there, and we'll go to my photos. So, some of you will know, some of you won't know, because I actually lived on a farm for 1 year. It was a sheep farm, and I was only a child when I lived on there, so it was a very long time ago now, many decades ago, but I did live on a farm for 1 year. And although it was mainly a sheep farm, there's a few things I do remember from my time on the farm. And one of the things was that we didn't have any combine harvester because there weren't enough crops done on the farm to make it worthwhile. So what we had instead was a chaff machine. This isn't a photo of the exact one that was on the farm, but this is a photo of the type of thing it was. Now when you look at this machine, okay, it had a pulley here, and that pulley attached to a belt that ran off a tractor, and I'll show you that in the next picture. And then at the end here, it would fill 2 big bags full of chaff. So basically what this machine here did is it did the same job that a combine harvester did, except instead of running through the fields, this would be parked at the edge of a field or something, and then all the grain that was harvested off the field brought to the machine rather than the machine running over the field. Now of course that's why we have combine harvesters nowadays, because this was an awful lot slower job than having a combine harvester was. But combine harvesters are a lot of money, so if you didn't have much grain to do, you could use one of these instead, even though they're quite old. And here you can see a picture of one actually being operated, so you can see that pulley, and you can see how it's running off a big belt off the tractor. The tractor wasn't always parked quite so close to the machine as it is in this picture, or my memory is of the tractor being parked a bit further away, so there was probably about 6 feet between the tractor and the machine here, the shaft machine. So this belt was quite a long one, and you had to stand a fair, well, because I was a child at the time, of course, I was always made stand a fair way back from that belt, just in case it ever snapped or it came off one of the pulleys or anything. And I remember my oldest brother having the job of putting these sacks on here, and it would fill 1 sack at a time. So while one was filling, you'd be getting the other one set up on the other tube there, and then when that one was full, there must have been a switch to switch over somewhere. Well, I don't know where the switch would be, and so you'd switch over until it started filling the other sack, and then you'd pull the sack off and tie it up and load it on a truck. Okay, now one of the things was that like most farms, there's some old trucks, and I remember there was a Dodge truck, but I don't remember enough about the Dodge truck to be able to find a picture of that one. I also remember there was a Thames trader truck. Now this is what a Thames trader truck looks like. Okay, very, very old. This is from the I believe it's from the 50s. Okay, but in New Zealand, like especially ever since World War II ended. Okay, so when World War II ended and the Kiwi men came home from the war, there wasn't a lot of money, so people had to work out ways to fix up old equipment to keep it running, because they just couldn't buy new equipment. It wasn't available in New Zealand, even if you did somehow have the money to buy it. So New Zealanders, especially the farming community, got a bit of a reputation for being able to keep anything going with just the use of number 8 wire. So on farms, even though these were very old trucks, you'd sometimes still see trucks like this on the farms. This was back in the 80s I'm talking, and this truck is probably from the 50s I believe. So the truck was 3 decades old already, and some of these trucks were probably no longer up to warranty fitness standards. So in New Zealand you have to have registration on a vehicle, plus you also have to have a warranty fitness, and depending on the age of the vehicle, if the vehicle's made after the year 2000, you get 12 monthly warranty fitnesses. If it's before the year 2000, you have to have 6 monthly warranty fitnesses. And when you go along to get a warrant, they're testing that the brakes work, and the suspension all works as it's meant to, and the steering all works, and everything like this, all the safety things. But they'll also fail you on some things that I think debatably aren't really to do with safety. So if you've got rust holes in the outside of your vehicle, they'll go and fail you on that, because they'll claim that a pedestrian could get their finger caught in one of the rust holes in the event of an accident or something. So a lot of these old farm trucks, they were old tracks that would no longer get a warrant of fitness, so you couldn't use them on the road anymore. So the trucking firms would sell them with probably a couple of million miles on the clock already, and some farmer who just wanted it for around the farm would buy it and keep on using it, but it couldn't use on the road anymore. And that was quite common practice in New Zealand. So I remember the farm having an old Thames trailer like this. You see, this one could be used for stacking bales on, and I tried to find a picture of what I'm about to tell you, but I can't find one anywhere in Google, so I don't know how common it was or anything. But I have a memory of having a conveyor belt, like it probably had a rubber belt on it, but it might have been a metal spiked one. But I remember a conveyor belt being attached to the side of the truck, and the truck would drive around the paddock where you've got a lot of small square bales, and you'd drive so that the small square bale hit the bottom of the conveyor belt, it lifted it up there, and then my oldest brother and someone else probably be standing on the back of the deck here, and they'd be stacking the bales on the deck as they came up. So all the conveyor belt was really doing was saving the job of having to try and lift the bales from the ground up to the deck of the truck, but it was still manually stacked once it got up here. Okay, and there's nothing like that on the Farming Simulator game, and as I said, I can't even find anything like that on any photos of that or anything, so I don't know how common that was. It may have been, not a common way of lifting bales up, but certainly if you didn't have a tractor with a front loader forks on the front of it or anything, then it was a way. Alternatively, you could manually lift all the bales up. And this is interesting because anyone that's played Farming Simulator knows that there's two ways of really stacking bales on a truck or on a trailer in Farming Simulator. One is to do it all by hand using front loader forks on a tractor or using any other type of lifting machine like that. I prefer front loader on a tractor, but different strokes for different folks. Or having auto load where you just drive close to the bale and it just magically stacks itself on the deck. Now, I've never really liked using auto load in that sense because it's just a wee bit unrealistic. Drive around the paddock, just drive near a bale and it will stack itself on the back. But I couldn't find any other thing of doing it previously. Now that's another Thames trailer, and you can see the shape of the bonnet better in this picture. Now, in previous versions of Farming Simulator, I sometimes used an ISO50 truck, pretending it was a Thames trailer, because I was doing mostly British farms, so I wanted English trucks sort of thing. And the ISO50 truck is that one there. It's a Russian truck, and as you can see, the shape of the bonnet is quite different than the Thames trailer. It's very, very similar how it's got the cab over design right over the wheels like that. So and you can see that's very similar here. Here you see you've got that ring on the wheel. I think in the last picture you can see it even better. This big ring around the rim here, and that became a step. And because it was a circular ring, there was always a bit of it at the top. So you'd step on there, and then you'd step up to there, and that's how you get into the cab. And so the ISO50 truck here, which is in all the different versions of Farming Simulator, I used to sometimes use that and just pretend it was a Thames trailer, which is one of these trucks, even though the shape of the bonnet was a wee bit different. Okay, I accept that. The problem with the ISO50 truck is they all seem to have very, very short chassis on them in the Farming Simulator game, so you couldn't get one with a decent length deck on it for stacking bales on, or if you wanted a back on it with sides on it, you couldn't have one that carried very much grain, so they're all very, very short chassis. So although I was happy enough that it looked close enough to a Thames trailer that I could sort of close one eye and pretend that's what it wasn't really ideal. Now, another old truck that we never had on our farm but were very, very common in New Zealand, oh sorry, that was just another ISO 50 there, was an old Bedford TJ series. So these were called Bedford J1, J2, J3. I think they went up to about J6, but I remember them being J1 through J3, and the different numbers, the different number designations were depending on what engine they had, because they could have a petrol engine or a diesel engine. Often, because these trucks came out in 1953, I believe these Bedfords came out in, so again they were very old trucks. Often by the time I remember them, they've been repowered, so the Bedford engine was long gone. They often had a straight 6 Holden engine put in them instead. But this was a very, very common truck in New Zealand. This one, the indicators weren't normally found there. They were normally found on top of the mudguards here. And I think I've got another picture with the indicators. Yep, there you go. There you can see that that's where the indicators most commonly were on these old Bedford J series trucks. So for a long time on Farming Simulator, I used to use the old FS22 truck, which is this one here, and pretend it was, because I wanted a British truck, not a Russian truck, I pretend that was an old Bedford J series, and have these on my farm. And I stopped using the FS22 when they brought out an excellent model of the Ford F600, which again, this Bedford looks very, very similar to the Ford F600. And I haven't got a photo of the F600 here because I have actually got the F600 on my farm, so we're going to go back to it in a minute, to the farm, and I'll show that to you. But yeah, the reason I've got the Ford F600 on my farm, even though you'd never get a Ford F600 in New Zealand, and it's doubtful you get one in the UK or Ireland, which is where most of my maps are, sort of thing, is because I treat it as being an old Bedford J series like this. Okay, and now these Bedfords came out in 1953, and they carried on making them until the very late 50s, and that was the last long nose truck Bedford ever made. The first short nose truck that they brought out, which came out in about 1958, I think, so more commonly known around the 60s, was the Bedford TK series. So this was a TK series Bedford. Again, a very, very old truck now. Now, remember, all of my farms are set in the 80s. Well, the majority of them are set in the 80s. So these trucks, even in the 1960s, these trucks were still 20 years old by then. So some of them were still very, very old trucks. Now, what I found so exciting is I'd never ever found any mod on Farming Simulator that looked like a Bedford TK series like this before. I have found one, and I'm quite excited about it, and that's what I'm going to show you today. I think that was it for photos I wanted to share. Yes, it is. So now, if we go back to the farm here, okay, so let's go for a walk over here. In fact, we'll run, so it'll be a bit faster. We'll go down here to where my trucks are. Now, these ones here, again, that's a static model that just sits there, but that could be an old Bedford or something like that. I don't know. But anyway, so I used to use the what's it called? Something 53. Yak, was it? Yak, Zak, I can't remember now. The Russian truck, anyway, for 53 in its name, as an old Bedford truck until this 4600 here. Oh, sorry, wrong one. Let's get out of here and go over this side. So yeah, this Ford F600 model came out, and I'll just start the motor up and close the bonnet down, and I'll put it out of the shed just so you can see it. So this one I've had for quite a while. So this is the Ford F600 one, and I use this as an old Bedford truck, okay, so I treat that as being a Bedford. And one of the things I really, really like about this truck is even when you're buying old trucks to use on the farm, ones that possibly couldn't even legally go on the road anymore, one of the things that was quite common in New Zealand is you'd have a big flat deck on the back of the truck like this, which you'd use as a bale truck. But then if you wanted to carry animals, in my case cows, because I've got a dairy farm, what you'd have is you'd have a stock cage kind of thing, which would generally have no floor on it. It would just fit on over the top of this truck, over the top of this deck. Now, so the closest I can get to that here is if I back up to here where the you can do the servicing of vehicles. I can go around here, past the fuel bowser, up to here, and I go to the back of the truck there. I go customize, and I normally change all of these to be that same colour because I don't like all the green bits all over it. So I do that, I'd go change, customise. It's cost me $0. So I've already paid to do this in the past. And once you've paid to do it, you can do it again for free. And then when I go back out of here, some of my maps I've actually got one of these sitting. If I jump into my truck again, I'll just pull it out for a second. So you can see it sitting on legs like that. So you'd get a stock back like that that would carry cows or sheep. It would have no floor on it, and it would just fit over the flat deck that's already there. Now, and with this mod here, you've actually got to take the flat deck off it and then put this one on instead. But it's close enough to the same, so that having that back there, just sitting up on its legs somewhere, looks really, really good and realistic for the kind of look I'm after. Now, you're thinking to yourself, but Russell, this isn't a grain truck. This is this isn't an animal moving truck. This is a grain truck. And you'd be absolutely right. But what you've got to remember is that with the use of the animal cane mod, you can make any truck you want an animal truck, because all you have to do is throw the cane into the back of the truck. So if I stop that there for a second, we'll go down here to my Land Rover, and I might have to open up, I need to open up the back of the Land Rover, so give me one moment. When I do that, I open the back up, because that's where I left my cane last. So this animal cane here, that works like a stock trailer. You can put animals into the cane. You don't see them when they're in there. I think it can hold a maximum from memory of 200 or something, but you just put in the number you think seems probably about right for the size of the truck that you've got. Bring it over there and drop it in. So now, if you jump up here for a second so you can see in the back of the truck, you can see the cane sitting there in the back of the truck. And what that means is, if I go and park this truck over anywhere where you can load animals up, I can put animals. And they're actually going, and I'll show you what I mean, because I believe the animal bit for this shed's just in here, if I remember rightly. So we'll just try parking there for a second and pressing, I want to get animals, or maybe it's along here a bit further. I'm sure it's this side, maybe it's the other end of the building. We'll go to have a look anyway. I've got time to show you. But if I bring this along here, and you can see I've got another old truck parked there. I've got lots of old trucks parked around the place on this particular farm. I just like it to add to the scenery. It's not going to play ball right now. I can't remember off the top of my head where the animal loading bit of this shed is. But anyway, if I park this truck in the right spot, it will allow me to load cows into the back of this truck. What it's really doing is loading cows into the cane, but because the cane is in the back of the truck, it's basically turned the truck into a stock truck. Although you won't see the cows once they're in there, because they're all inside that cane, they're not inside the truck itself. So you wouldn't see my cows in the truck, but by doing that I can treat any truck, even some of the old trucks like this, as animal trucks. And so I've always done that, and it also means that if I am doing a field of grain, I can take the cane out of there and I can use this as a grain truck. So that sort of thing's been ideal. It means that these the 4600 that I really love this mod, and I've had this mod for a long time, I can use as a bale truck when I've got it set up with a flat deck. I can use as a grain truck with these sides on it, or I can use it as an animal truck. But anyway, just the other day I discovered another truck, and it's another American truck. I'd always looked at the Russian trucks for which ones of these can I use as something else. But this American International truck here, again, I'll just pull it out of the garage so you can see it better. This was the new one I found just the other day. And you'll see that looks a lot like that TK Bedford that I showed you a picture of before. Now, I've got a for sale sign in the window. That's an option. You don't have to have that. In the same way you don't have to have that tow bar in the front. But what those tow bars get used for, I'll just show you. So we go up to here and you can put it down. So if the truck breaks down or if it gets stuck, you can hook a tractor up to the front of it to pull it out. And that's what those tow bars are there for. You'd very, very rarely see something like that on a truck, and certainly it would be a very old truck when you did. And that's one of the reasons I've got it on here, just to make it look even more like an old farm truck. So this is actually an international truck, but I'm treating it as a TK Bedford. Now you notice on the back of it, I've got one of those Ursus bale trailer attachments. Okay, and now I must admit I've done a bit of a Google search. I cannot find the Ursus bale trailer, which you're probably all familiar with if you know Farming Simulator, is definitely a real trailer. It really does exist. Okay, I've never seen one attached to the back of a truck like this. But given that New Zealand farmers were very much, we can fix anything, we can make do with anything, it makes good sense that if you had an old truck and you had an old Ursus bale trailer that perhaps the drawbar had rusted away on, or the suspension had collapsed, there's no reason that it would make perfect sense for a Kiwi farmer, to attach the Ursus bale trailer to the back of a truck, and you'd end up with a truck that can carry bales and it can self-load like this. But unlike having an auto-load truck, it seems actually fairly realistic as it's doing it. Whereas the auto-load, you just drive past near a bale and it just magically appears on the truck, to me isn't very realistic. Now the reason I was very, very excited about this back for this truck is that I do really, really enjoy loading bales by hand. You've seen me do that on numerous videos. But sometimes when you've got, like if you've mowed a couple of fields and you've got 60 to 80 bales to load by hand and bring in off the field, you do some manually using the old front loader on the tractor and loading them up onto a flat deck truck. But after a bit, you sort of think, oh, this is getting too long and drawn out. And being able to have an auto-load truck like this, or it's not auto-load, it's more realistic than auto-load, but it's a lot easier work than manual stacking, well, it just, to me, this is perfect, this truck. So I was really, really excited when I saw this one. Now, the other thing that's interesting with this mod, and if I go in here, I'll show you. See, it's all under this section here. Okay, so first of all, you can choose the length of chassis and frame you want. And so you can see there's lots of different options there. Now, you'd never ever get a triple axle trailer like that on a truck in New Zealand, but some of the double ones you definitely would. So you can have some of a short 14-foot long single axle, a 16-foot long single axle, a 20-foot long single axle, an 18-foot long double axle, 20-foot long double axle, and that's probably as far as I would use if I'm trying to sort of treat it as a New Zealand style farm truck. I don't think you get any bigger than that one there, but it gives you all these different options, you see, and there's a whole bunch of other options down there, as you can see. But let's just go back there, and then you've got all the different backs you can get for it, and most of them are just normal style backs like you'd expect to see, some grain carrying backs and things like that. And each back, it tells you, so this is a 16-foot long back, this one, so you need the 16-foot long chassis option if you wanted to use that back. Okay, you've got more 16-foot long ones. Now if you come along here, there's my Ursus bale trailer one, and that's a 16-foot long one. As you can see, you can change the colour of it and things. So that's the one that I've already got on the back of my truck. But it's got another one here. It's actually got a proper livestock carrier, which works on a 20-foot long chassis that you can use if you want to. And it's got an opening tailgate on the back. I don't generally use this one because this one only carries 7, I think it is from memory. Yes, 7 cows. So if I want to carry cows on this one, I can only take 7 at a time. And I normally like to carry a few more than that. I like to carry about 15 at a time, sort of thing. So that's why I generally just use the cane inside at the back of another truck and treat it as a stock truck. But I do have the option at least of having a proper stock carrier there if I want to use it. Okay, and it's got a number of other, it's got a flat deck there if I want to have a bale truck that I load manually. I've got that, although I've also got the other Bedford as well. But yeah, so I'm actually really, really excited that I've got the Bedford over there, the Bedford J3, which I've had for donkey's ages. I have that on a lot of my different maps. But I've now got a Bedford T series, or TK series as well, and it's got this automatic bale one here. And to me, I just absolutely love that. I've actually taken the Ursus bale trailer mod out of my mod folder now because I've replaced it with this mod instead. But what I love about this mod is I don't have to stack all the bales by hand, using a front loader on a tractor, which is what I do with that blue Bedford over there, and I've got the flat deck on that. So if I've done enough of that and I want to get bales lifted faster than that, I don't have to do it by hand. But again, it's not as unrealistic as having auto load. You just drive past a bale in the field and it automatically just jumps onto the back of your truck and stacks itself. So yeah, I really like this. It's a good combination. It's automatic, it's not manual, but it's not unrealistic. It is actually quite realistic. So this truck is going to become part of my fleet, not just on this map that I'm on right now, but indeed on most of my farms. I'm going to have this truck as well now, and I'll have both trucks as baler trucks. And as I said, to explain away why I'd have two, not one but two older trucks on my farm, is the fact that first of all this one is for sale. So I've been trying to sell it for years, sort of thing, and it's got the tow bar in front there, and that would tend to suggest it's not as reliable as it perhaps could be, because otherwise you just use a chain and it did on occasion break down. But to actually go to the extent of welding up bars like that to attach a proper tow bar too, it tends to suggest it gets towing fairly regularly, so perhaps it's not as reliable as it could be. And that makes sense. As I said, these trucks are from the 50s and 60s, and my farms are normally set on in the 80s. So these trucks are between 20 and 30 years old. 30 years for the blue one, 20 years for the green one. So both of them, you wouldn't necessarily have a great deal of reliability with them. They've probably both gone around the clock a number of times. They might be up to like 1,000,000 miles or something, you never know. So just having them both, it's quite cheap trucks, but as a way of getting my bales off my field and into my bale storage areas, I think these are going to be really great. So that was my reason for having this video, and thank you for joining me on it. Okay, bye for now.